Hello and welcome to MGM Motorz first episode of our Vlodcast. I'm Graham.
And I'm Matt.
Hope you are all well. So episode 1, just an introduction to who me and Matt are and a little bit about our car history, car background and what we've got planned for the channel really. So Matt, where did you start? Where did your love of cars start from?
I really don't know is the honest answer. I've always followed Formula One. I say always. I remember growing up watching Ayrton Senna driving. So sort of mid to late 80s, from the age of 4 upwards, I was watching Formula One with my dad. My dad loves Formula One, but my dad is in no way into his cars, as you'll testify. We once washed a car for him that is supposedly one of his favourite cars to have owned. He hadn't had it cleaned or attempted to clean it for 2 years.
Yeah, it'd been a while, hadn't it?
It had been a while. And to be fair, it wasn't that dirty. He didn't really use it, but it came up a treat. But I don't really know where my love for cars came from, other than from watching F1. Like I say, he certainly wasn't a massive petrol head. I remember as a kid, he had a Sierra LX as his first company car. And they were, the one he had was an 1800cc rear-wheel drive LX, and I remember going up the Lake District around some twisties and him sort of power sliding it around and being a bit of a hooligan. So he certainly did. He used to enjoy driving. I don't think he really enjoys driving in the same way that he did used to. And I certainly wouldn't call him a petrol head. But my first word was tractor. Now, okay, that's not a car. I appreciate that's not a car, but the reason for that was what drove past our house as I was a kid growing up. But obviously, there was something about engines and tractors and whatever that I saw that triggered an interest that has, well, it's fueled a lifetime of experiences really from when I passed my driving test, and obviously I'll come on to that. But the cars I've had, the shows I've gone to, magazine features, and all sorts of different things that I've done, and friends that I've got that I still talk to 10 years after getting rid of certain cars and have become good pals with, because ultimately we're all petrol heads,
that's it, isn't it?
You're one of my best mates, and obviously one of my other best mates is Chris, who I've known since I was 10. So 28 years, nearly 29 years that I've known Chris. And when I was 10, one of the first things I remember being and doing was messing around with bikes and car or motorbikes and whatever. I remember one of the first things he did was fix a puncture on my bike and promptly snap the spindle on the front wheel so that I couldn't actually put the wheel back on. So we've always been messing around with things that have been on wheels, really. And I guess that's kind of joined it all together. So what about you? What sort of got you into cars?
So it's a similar sort of thing. My dad, obviously, in his company cars, I remember he had a Peugeot 405 SRI in red as one of his company cars, and I always remember that. And I can't remember where we were out one day, had Def Leppard on, and I was standing out the sunroof in traffic.
Random.
Very random. But I think that, for me, that's where my love of cars from. And obviously, when I was younger, obviously growing up next door to a couple of neighbours, their dad was a mechanic, and he always had, I remember he had a Mark 1 Golf GTI, black one. I think that's probably where my love for modding and all in-car audio come from, because he had Mark 1 Golf. I remember I had 2 12-inch subs in the back, and it was just ridiculous. We were probably 12, 13, getting picked up and taken to football with Rhythm as a Dancer blaring out the back, subs pounding. So that's
he had some mental cars over the years, because I guess we might as well tell people that the way I met you was I happened purely by chance to buy the house next door to you, to where you are, and
so obviously
I'm sure that the bike you're talking about is Pete.
Yeah, Pete, obviously. So he's had Mark 1 Golf GT. He's had a couple of Mark 1 Golf GTIs. He's had Mark 2.
I remember the hill climbing Range Rover that he had.
He got into 4x4 for a little bit. He had the hill climb Range Rover. He had the original Scirocco. He's had some really, but it's always been, Pete's very much a Volkswagen, or at the time, very, very Volkswagen.
Well, he still is now. He's got an A5 and an A1.
Yeah, he's got an A1 and an A5 now, so he's upgraded, if you like, to Audi.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's always been sort of that side of the German market, as it were.
The wrong side of the market.
Yeah, the wrong side of the market. We'll come on to our love for BMWs later, no doubt. So yeah, that's pretty much where my love come from. And then again, same as you, again, playing around with bikes and that with Aaron and Ross, again, obviously Pete's kids, and it's just a similar sort of thing. It grows, and obviously, like you say, the people you meet, you end up being mates for life, sort of thing from it, really.
I mean, interesting. Paul is one that I remember. I've got fond memories of us messing around with cars for various different reasons.
Yeah,
and various stories that will probably come out on this.
Yeah,
and I certainly remember having never met Paul. This was going back to, so I bought the house 2003, so 17 years ago that I moved in next year, and met Paul fairly soon after, and met AD as well, and all that sort of stuff, and I hadn't seen Paul for a long time, and obviously he started doing these canvases and different bits and bobs, and he bought me one of those round that I ordered, and he was round here for an hour and a half ish, and you immediately just pick up, and you've got that same conversation, that same, because you've got that same mindset, and it's all about finding people that you've got common interests with, isn't it? And
that's it. I think if you're a car guy, doesn't matter where you go, you'll be able to hit it off straight away with another car guy or car girl. You've just got that, that.
I think that's the same with anything, isn't it? You follow Liverpool, I follow Coventry, but we both have a love of football, and we can quite easily lose a lot of time talking about that, and we won't get into the league table at the moment because I was shocked myself looking at it because I don't follow the Premier League. I looked at that and thought I'd gone back 20 years seeing Man United in second place.
I know, mate. I know.
It's very, very strange to see, but there's almost that thing, isn't there? If you've got a common interest, you'll click and get on with someone, and you'll find loads of stuff to talk about. And I think me and you have always talked about cars. I know that the wife will come in and she's great. She'll keep us happy while we're washing cars, making drinks and whatever. And we'll be sat there in the evening, and she'll come in and go, "What are you talking about cars?" And that's pretty much a standard sort of thing, isn't it?
And pretty much since you moved in next door, when it was obviously you moved away now, we've always tinkered on with cars. Always. There's never been a time where it's not, whether it's been wiring stereos in, fitting airboxes, cleaning them, getting them broke into, it's always been cars has been the linchpin of our friendship, as it were.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it has. And I think there's certain cars that we spent more time fixing than modding.
Yeah.
The first MR2 brings to mind with that. That became almost a weekly occurrence that something had broken on it. And obviously at one point Cher was using that as her daily car because I was doing more mileage, and I had the little Saxo at the time. Yeah. Because I was doing all the miles on that, getting the expenses, and all the expenses I was getting ploughed straight back into painting that and
into the two,
and fixing that. And we'll come on to the stories about that, because that's probably, I've got a lot of cars that I've loved, that I've been proud of, and Chris always mocks because I don't sell cars.
No, you don't. Not really.
We've talked about one car that is on my drive at the moment, and we talked about it, and Cher now tends to jump in that rather than the car she's supposed to be driving. So she keeps jumping in the Clio. Yeah. And we talked about, well, I'm not sure if that will be here. But every time I get in that, it puts a smile
on your face.
Every time I get in the 4 Series, it puts a smile on my face.
Yeah.
I get in the M2, that thing blows me mind every single time I drive it. And
but that's what it's meant to do, isn't it?
Absolutely. But every time me and you go out for a play in it, we're just both giggling like schoolgirls every time we come out of a junction, and it sends it sideways.
Absolutely.
But they're all such special cars for all different reasons.
Yeah.
And I think Chris has had more flipping cars than I've had hot dinners, to be fair.
Yeah, Chris is in a position, lucky position where he's had some crazy cars, which no doubt we'll discuss down the line in future episodes, maybe in this episode. But let's talk about our car history and what we've had, our shonkers and shiners.
Shonkers and shiners, I like that.
Yeah. So
what was your first then?
So
are we including what was essentially your car and the car that actually belonged to your mum but you used the most, or were we just talking about cars?
Yeah, so when I passed my test, I passed my test and got, like I'm sure many new drivers, they've got insured on their mum or dad's car. So I got insured on my dad's car, which was a 1.8 Mondeo LX, M25 EDU was the registration, and that rapidly became the car of the summer, and some of the memories that we had in me. Not so much you at the time, but me and a few of the other lads had some fantastic memories in that car.
That would have been before me, because I think you probably would have passed your test in 2000 if you passed when you were 17.
Yeah, so yeah, it would have been early 2000. So yeah, so that would have been just before you. And then obviously the first car, my first car, which obviously you'll remember, was the Fiesta Zetec S W648 BCK.
Was that really your first car?
First car I actually paid for, yeah.
Bought?
First car I bought for myself. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So that must have been 2004.
There or thereabouts.
I'm thinking 2000. The only reason I'm doing a timeline in my mind is because of how it aligned with another car that came at the same time.
When did you move it? When did you move in next door?
I moved in April 2003. And it wasn't straight away, because I know when you bought it, because you bought that either literally just before or literally just after Cher passed her test.
Yeah. So
because if you remember, there's the funny story that goes as to you bought that and then something else arrived.
Yes. Yeah. And obviously, no doubt we'll come on to that. So yeah, that was the first car that I bought. The first car that I sort of ploughed. That was the first car that I actually modded, did anything to. So obviously, I bought that off my other best friend, and obviously, so that had, what did we do to that?
Well, it already had the Magnex can on it, didn't it?
Yeah, we put the Magnex can on it. We lowered it. Obviously, there was an air filter on it, because that's what you did at the time. And I think for me, the main thing for that is that was the car. That was the ice install car for me. That was That was big. So I had two JLW0 subs in it, V12 mono running them. Obviously, your standard 6x9s, backdoor speakers, rear door. Obviously, there wasn't backdoor speakers as such because it was a 3-door. But obviously, rear speakers, front speakers. Yeah, so
was that not door speakers, 6x9s off 1 amp, and then the subs are off another amp, weren't they?
Yeah, so there was I had a V12 4-channel and a V12 mono block.
Yeah.
Running that, obviously. The original head unit was a Sony. I can't remember what the model unit was, but I remember the head unit originally was $1,000. And you're going back 2003.
Probably 50 quid on eBay now.
It was massive money. And I remember I was at the gym and it got broke into. I remember being on the treadmill and the owner of W648 BCK, can you come to reception, please? Gone downstairs, smashed window.
But it wasn't just a window, didn't it? Did the A-pillar or the
they've tried to get in with a screwdriver, so they bent the door a little bit and they ended up smashing the window. Had it out, and then obviously I got that replaced. So yeah, that was the first car for me that I put money into. I suppose that's where you can say my passion for car modification and I call it detailing loosely at the time.
It wasn't then, no.
It wasn't then. It was washing cars at the time.
Yeah, we only used one bucket. We can't call it.
Yeah, but to be fair, I reckon 2003, 2004, you're not going to get many 2-bucket washes.
Well, yeah, the detailing was more underground. It would have been out there, but you're probably right.
You're probably right. So that was the first car I put money into.
And that didn't last particularly long, did it?
No, it didn't. There was an eventful night in a September. Yeah, it was a September where I was of an age where I was a boy racer, you know.
So what were you, 20, 22, 20, 21?
22, 20, 21, I think, 21, yeah. So it was a September just after I turned 21, boy racer, doing what boy racers do, racing around the streets. Lost control, put it through 2 walls, got cut out the car, and subsequently got charged with dangerous driving. Lost my licence for 12 months, 120 hours community service. So yeah, whilst it had fond memories, it also has that cloud over it. But that's my own fault. You know, it's myself to blame, but I've learned from that rapidly.
Yeah, and you know, that's the key thing, and you learn from it. And the sad thing is when you see these accidents where it's just kids trying to have fun,
Yeah.
And it's very easy. You don't really see it so much now anymore. It's very easy for me, and I'll sound like a right old git saying this, but it's very easy for me to say I think the black box is a wonderful invention.
Yeah, and I think
I say that with I look back to when I was hooning around as a kid, and I'll come on to my first car in a minute, but the cars of that I was hooning around in had far less power than the cars that the kids are getting now.
You look at first cars nowadays, so the Z-Tech F was more, and I think with everything done to it, it probably ran about 110 horsepower.
Yeah. Whereas now you go and get yourself a 1 litre EcoBoost Fiesta, they start at 125 brake.
125, but people aren't even buying those as first cars now, are they? You're seeing young lads getting A200 Mercs or 120D BMs, and you're talking 120D BMs, nearly 200 horsepower.
Well, it's 180 horsepower, and it's rear-wheel drive.
Exactly.
I think obviously that when you're talking young kids learning to drive and driving, the one that springs to my mind at the moment is James next door, my neighbour kid, and he's got I think it's a 1.2 Corsa.
Yeah.
And ultimately it's got the loud back box on it, and it's got the induction kit on it. So it's the exact same thing as us. Yeah. And whilst it makes a lot of noise, it's got a black box on there, or it did have a black box on there for his first year of driving, which I think had he not had that, it definitely would have been crashed.
Yeah, I mean, damaged. I've been my first car, and I've been horrifically bad. There was no two ways about it. But I mean, let's look at your first car. What was your first car?
So my first car was actually the same age that I was. So my first car was a 1982 Volkswagen Polo.
Yeah.
And I actually got this car when I was 14. So my granddad had gone to buy a new car from Saab, and he'd offered this Polo in part exchange, and I think they pretty much offered him 50 quid. It was scrap money sort of thing. Yeah. And he said, well, it's not worth taking 50 quid off the new car. I'll give it to me, basically, ready for when I pass my driving test. And it sat there on mum and dad's drive, and I messed around with the car. It's how I learned to set carbs by ear, and learned a lot of basic mechanics on that car with Chris helping me. When I first got that, I really didn't know one end of a spanner from another, and Chris was an apprentice at
arguably you still don't.
Well, I think I know enough. Plus, I've got an engineer next door if I do get stuck.
Very true.
But I had that, and it was the bread van shape. I've not got any picture.
Yeah,
to show.
I'll throw one up.
Yeah. So I probably have got one saved. So I haven't got one of the actual car, because when I passed my driving test, it was 1999, and camera phones were not a thing.
No, they really weren't.
I don't think I've got any pictures really of anything much before my MR2 sort of days. But my first car, 1982, 1 litre Polo, 1043cc Polo, bread van. Cracking memories. It was an absolute nail of a car. It had 125,000 miles on the clock. The carb would go out of tune regularly. It had been. My granddad was the Christian motorist, shall we say? So it had been looked after very kindly and nurtured around, and then it's given to a 17-year-old lad whose throttle position was on
Open.
or off. Well, it was on or off. That was it. There was no in between. It was flat out everywhere.
Yeah, you're either looking at the sky or looking at the floor.
Well, absolutely. And I actually had in that car in the first year of driving, I actually had 13 incidents. So if the car had gone through the insurance company, it probably would have been written off about 4 times.
Yeah.
There was one episode where I was following behind Chris, and he was in his mum's Fiesta because he'd written off his car, and we were coming back from a mate's house or something. And of course, we lived out in Forlongley, so there's no police, there's no speed cameras, there's nothing. For all intents and purposes, back then there was far less traffic on the roads, there were far less speed cameras, there was less old bill. You could absolutely go flat out, especially in a 1 litre Polo that had about 50 horsepower.
I think that comes back to the black boxes, isn't it? I think back in the day, they weren't needed because there was less people on the road.
There was less people, but also the cars were less powerful. That Polo probably had about 50 horsepower. It was not a quick car.
Yeah.
But I remember Chris coming back round going, One minute I saw you, the next minute your headlights were in the sky, and it was literally I'd hit some standing water and just gone straight on into the field. And the farmer, I saw the farmer. How he found out it was me, I don't know, but I saw the farmer a few days later, and he tried to get me to pay for a new fence and a new hedge and all this sort of stuff. Apparently the cows got out because I crashed into his field and took his fence out. Now, that car, had that car gone through the insurance, that car would have been completely written off.
100%.
As it was, it went down to D&R Motors down the road in Arley. He got stuck on the jig, who pulled the wing back into position because the driver's door would not open. I had to get out the passenger side. So they pulled the wing back, bashed a few bits back into space, bolted the drive shaft back in, which had popped out, and off I went. You know, that was one incident with that. I had another race in another mate where I hit some. I'm not really sure what happened. I hit some standing gravel and spun off the road into a ditch. Managed to get the car out the ditch, but somehow I'd ruptured a brake line, so I then had no brakes to get back home. But you know, every time I see one of those cars, as crap as they are now, because they're just old. You know, it was 1982.
Brings back memories, though, doesn't it?
It's nearly 40 years old, that car.
Yeah.
Every time I see one, I'm very tempted to buy it.
Yeah,
it's for no other reason than nostalgia. You wouldn't buy it and go, "I bought it because it's a brilliant car."
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's definitely not a modern classic.
It's not, absolutely. And you know, when I took the job that I do now, when I first took that job, I was doing huge amounts of mileage, and I had to buy a diesel car that was going to be good on fuel for doing all of those miles. And because of my granddad and because of my dad, I went and bought my Saab 93. And it was a high miler, and it was absolutely wrecked by the time I'd finished because it was finished up at 180,000.
That motor went and went.
It was brilliant. I absolutely loved it for what it was for, and it was bought purely with the purpose of I've got to stack a load of miles on this. I don't want to spend a lot of money because the job at the time was only a seconded position, so it wasn't a permanent job. So I didn't want to go and commit myself to a credit commitment for 400 quid on a car when I might have not had that job in a year's time or whatever. As it was, I got that job and it led on to other things. But, you know, my brief car history, that I did eventually kill that first Polo.
Yeah.
It took me 6 months from passing my test to eventually ripping the sump off the bottom of the engine and seizing it solid.
Yeah.
And in my infinite wisdom, and I think this was my mother's fault as well, she went, well, why don't you buy another one? And then you'll have a load of spare parts. So that's a good idea, Mum. So at this time I was at college, so I didn't have big income to go out and buy a car. So it was an overdraft from the bank of Mum and Dad that was paid back from working at the hotel that I worked at the time. Yeah. And I bought another one, and this is the stupidity of it. I bought it thinking, great, it's another bread van Polo. Didn't particularly want one. I wanted a Nova, and I was trying to convince them to let me get a Nova. And it would have been...
I think, right, because obviously we're of that age where the Novas and the Fiesta RS Turbos, I think I'm probably one of the only people I know that hated the Nova. Couldn't stand it.
It was either that or a 205. But the 205s were too dear.
Yes.
And the beauty of the Nova was you could get a Nova 1.2 Merit and make it look like an SR really easily.
Yeah, you just stick a Nova Dose kit on it, didn't you?
Whereas if you bought a 205 to make it look like a GTI, bearing in mind I was 18, so I couldn't get insured on anything like that.
Yeah.
You couldn't make a 1.1 XN 205 look like a GTI.
No, you couldn't.
That was the attraction of the Nova.
Yeah.
And everyone had them. It was either, what was it? It was either, back then, it was either Nova 205.
Nova 205.
AXGT.
Yeah. Fiesta RS Turbo stroke XR3i. 2i, sorry.
XR2i, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was sort of it. And then it moved on. And by the time we were actually in a position to be buying half-decent cars, it had become Saxo, Corsa 106.
Z-Tech S to a degree,
Z-Tech S Fiesta. Well, they were a little bit later, I think, weren't they? But yeah. And obviously they were, but yeah, it was, but yeah. So I ended up with this Mark II bread van Polo, thinking, oh, brilliant! I've got a brand new, not brand new, but new to me, and it was 5 years newer, so it was only 12 years old with 1 million miles on it, and it was a lovely green colour until someone hit the wing, and then it ended up with a black wing on it, and the rest of the car was green.
Yeah,
and I never did paint it. and that had a wonderful tendency to overheat.
Mm.
So, and it was because the radiator was blocked. But because I was a poor college student, and this is where I do know one end of a spanner from the other, I had to every other week take the rad out to reverse flush it to get the sludge and the crap out of it so that it would flow again for a couple of weeks and not overheat. Yeah. Now, the simple solution to fix the problem would have been to buy a new radiator.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the money to buy a new radiator. So I bodged the fan so that the fan ran all the time. And then when you eventually started seeing that wasn't doing it and it was still getting too hot, you had to take the rad out and flush the rad out.
Yeah, I think, looking back, I think I'm so glad I never had to do that. I think I'm glad because obviously I had my dad's car, and then ultimately, I think.
But that's why you don't know how to undo a dust cap.
Yeah, mechanically, I'm a bit of a retard. I'm not as mechanically prowess as you, but I do know how to use a hammer as well as you. But
we're both good at using a hammer.
Yeah, I think for me, when it comes down to cars, I'm sort of like, give me a screwdriver and some wires, and I'll wire it in. And we'll come to that.
We'll come on to that.
We'll come on to that. How long have we known each other?
2003, 17 years.
17 years. So in 17 years, I've had one electrical mishap. One. And you're not letting me live it down.
Well, that's because it was one mishap that kept repeating itself, 17 fuses.
Yes, we may as well go into it. So Matt was your VTR? Was it a VTR?
Well, it wasn't a VTR.
It was a West Coast. It was a Furio West Coast. So it was a 1.
West Coast was the Mark 1. The Furio was the Mark 2.
Yeah, so was it a 1 litre? It was a 1 litre.
No, it was a 1400.
Sorry, 1400 dressed up to look like the VTS.
Yeah, and VTR wheels and badges.
So he had a big sound system in it, as we all did, and got broke into. So we've gone over to...
Yeah, so it had the MTX sub originally, didn't it?
Yeah, had an MTX sub and whatnot. And it got broke into on the drive. So we drove over to Bayshore because it was in West Midlands, Walsall. Wolverhampton, Walsall. Yeah. It was a trek away. Obviously, we're Coventry, so it's a good 45 minutes away. So we've got the stuff. We've brought it back to ours. And I've
2 Pioneer 12s, didn't we?
Yeah, 2 Pioneer 12-inch subs. And I can't remember what amp you had.
I want to say JBL.
It was a JBL mono. So we're there wiring it in, obviously. We've run the wires. It's all tidy. I'm popping fuses. I'm like, mate, what is going on here? There's something wrong with this amp. So anyway, we've unwired it. We've gone all the way back to Wolverhampton. Gave it the bloke, and he's like, show me what you've been doing. So we've done it, popped under the fuse. He goes, you're wiring it backwards. I was literally wiring the live and the neutral the wrong way around. Absolute rookie error. But yeah, so
it's one of those things, and I build computers as well, don't I?
Yeah.
You're with me when I build computers, and as you go on these journeys with whatever hobby it is, whatever you're doing, you'll make mistakes.
Yeah,
but you'll only make them once.
Absolutely, I've never done it since.
And
I've never done it since.
I think we did wire a sub and amp into my Clio, didn't we? Not long ago.
Yeah.
And that was the first thing that we were checking was right.
Yeah, literally. I have since then it's like that. So live and neutral, make sure they're right around.
Yeah.
And yeah, to be fair. And I've never lived that down, and I probably never will. To be fair, so thanks for that, mate.
Yeah. So that was the Polo was my first and second car.
Yeah.
You said you had your Z-Tech S first.
I had the Z-Tech S, obviously bin that, and then.
Well, obviously, then you had 12 months of not.
Well, while I was waiting for my ban, I drove around in a Fiat Cinquecento bag of nails.
That was the X's car.
That was what. Hey, if we're talking X's cars, mate, there's going to be a few.
It actually was before who I'm thinking about.
It was before who you're thinking of.
I remember this car actually. It was the light bluish colour.
Light blue Cinquecento. Snap the handbrake on your drive and all sorts.
This was the one that every time you pulled up, our lovely neighbour over the road, who's a little bit simple, would lean out the window and shout ice cream.
Ice cream, yes, and yes, he did.
I asked him a long time afterwards. I said, "Why was that? Why did you shout ice cream?" He says, "They use those in Turkey, I think it was he'd been, or somewhere like that.
As ice cream
vans. They actually stripped the back of them out and put freezers in there." He said.
Now you know.
But no, that was funny.
So that's why you used to shout ice cream out the window at me then. Fair enough. So yeah, I had that for a little bit. Then obviously I got moved in with another girl and had colourful car history, shall we call it?
Shit car history.
It was honking, wasn't it? I don't think there was a good car. So I've had...
I know there was one that you liked, but it wasn't a good car.
Which one?
The 307 convertible.
Yeah, I did like that. So, but it was relatively new, so there wasn't too many issues with it. So what did I have? I had 2 Fiat Puntos.
One was yellow.
1 point. I had a yellow one and a blue one. I had a 307 convertible, which I like that. It was decent, and Beetle, VW
was it
Beetle.
A yellow Beetle?
No, everyone says it was a yellow Beetle. She was renowned for having a yellow Beetle when it first come out. That's before we were together. We had the red one.
Right.
Absolutely worst car ever. It was horrible.
I remember that having quite a few issues.
Yeah, it ran so bad on oil, like real oil burner. And I think that went. I think we either got rid of that and got the Punto, or got rid of that and got. No, we got rid of that. We had a 307 and a Punto at the same time. Because I remember when we split up, I smoked around in the Punto for a little bit. But then we got rid of her.
What happened with the Punto though? Because
which one?
We had to get someone out.
Yeah. So when we split up, I carried on. I was driving around in the Punto, and the Synchro. I think it was the Synchro went on it. Something went on it.
No, it was the selectors. It wasn't in the gearbox, was it?
No, something went that was sort of trivial. Got the RAC out and he bodged it for us.
Yeah.
So he literally bodged it for us one day, gave it her back the next day, and that was it. I washed my hands of it at that point. Done. And then I got my first. Can you call it my first proper car?
I loved that car. It was the wrong shape.
It wasn't the wrong shape, and we'll have this debate. We'll have this debate until the end of time. It's the best shape they've ever made, bar the 22B.
Well, we will have this debate till the end of time. But
the car we're talking about is
the best thing that was about that car that made it unique and made me like it so much.
It was the colour.
Because you never saw them in that colour, or very rarely.
I will try.
It also had the Moret lights on it, didn't it?
It did. I will try and get a picture of the car in the correct colour. So it was a 2001 51 plate Subaru Impreza, 2-litre turbo.
Right.
Yeah, WRX 2-litre turbo. It was in like a burgundy red colour with the gold wheels.
Mica Red, it was called.
That's right, Mica Red. It had the STI spoiler and it had the Moret front lights on it.
And the STI wheels.
Yeah, it had the STI gold wheels on it. And the colour combination was absolutely stunning. It just suited the car, and I absolutely love that. But young, stupid, had a couple of faults with it. Rather than thinking this ain't going to be that expensive to fix, I just got rid of it.
I think the big problem with that car, looking back on it now, because what I loved about that car was the fact that I also had one.
Yeah, you got.
It wasn't mine, but it was.
No, yeah, it was. It was. You got a classic, didn't you?
Yeah, so mine was a 98S Turbo 2000, which was the UK equivalent of WRX.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the usual blue. It was a different.
It was like a light purpley blue, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it had a red pearl in it, which really
again. I'll try and throw a picture up.
Yeah, I probably have got a picture of that somewhere, so I'll have to find that out. But that had the big wing on it, although it wasn't the proper STR wing like yours. It was
yours was like a Type UK. It was like the spoiler was off a later car.
Yeah, almost like an STR6 it looked like, but
yeah,
it had a not a stupid. Neither of them had stupid loud exhaust, to be fair. But
no, I think mine had a Pro Drive exhaust on it.
Yeah, so it was an uprated one. And it had the STI wheels on it, and that in the end had to go because Cher's job moved, and it was only doing something like 16 to the gallon.
I think they're both real bad on mileage, weren't they? I think
the big problem. I know what the big problem was with ours was that we found when I went to get rid of it at Martin Rumbles, I think it was, or wherever it was, I've chucked it in for the Fiesta. When I was going through the paperwork, it's like this mileage doesn't quite tally up, and it actually appeared to have been clocked a couple of times. And it didn't have a true story. And it could. It's funny because I chopped it in, and I actually saw it at a couple of car meets. And there's a picture of my old 330, and you can see it in the background under the car meet that I went to. And I ended up talking to the lad that bought it, and the lad that bought it went to school with Chris, and it was all a bit of it was a bit of a
small world conversation.
Exactly. And sadly, like a lot of Jack cars, the Rock got it. And when I saw it, the arches were gone, and it was, it's a real shame when that happens. But
Yeah.
Inevitably that is probably what killed that car.
Because engine wise, they're pretty much bulletproof. I mean, like with mine, looking back, it was a sensor and a window regulator that needed changing.
Well, yeah, it kept popping a check engine light, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I think ours had done it on, and ours had been the knock sensor that had got the wrong bolt in it or something.
Yeah.
So it kept coming loose. And once that was fixed, mechanically, yes, it was shit on fuel, but it didn't actually flag a load of faults. It didn't go wrong. It was okay.
No, yours was like yours was a pretty solid car, to be fair.
Yeah, we had it for a year, and literally the only reason it had to go was because of MPG and because of where Cher was working.
Yeah.
And she to this day, I think if I had her here on this conversation, she would be saying that she wishes she probably didn't get rid of it. She enjoyed the car.
Yeah, I think we can both say that about the Subarus.
Yeah, I would. I've said to you before, we've sat playing our usual Saturday night game when Cher's kicked us out the lounge, and you're on that computer, and I'm on this one that I'm on now, and you've had the trader up, and we've played the game of what would you buy if?
What would you buy if? Yeah.
And quite often they come up, and they still come up now. And for me, I think they've lost their way in terms of the design. The new WRX it's trying too hard, and
I think the Peanut Eye, which I know is your favourite one, so
the 2003 to 2005.
Yeah, so the revision after the one that I like, which was the Bug Eye, I think that was the last true Impreza.
Yeah.
After that, they went to the Hawkeye and then the hatchback, and then
they're not. Brought the saloon back, but they've called it the STI WRX. It's not called the Impreza anymore.
Yeah, and I think as well when they went to the Hawkeye, I could be wrong, but that's when they got rid of the 2-litre boxer engine. They went to the 2.5.
Yeah, that's right.
So the noise changed. Yeah. It became something that there wasn't a Subaru in my. It wasn't an Impreza in my eyes.
Yeah, it was more like a legacy, if anything.
Yeah,
but, I agree, and I like I say, if one came up for the right money, and I don't know if you saw it, but there was a Top Gear did a piece on Colin McRae because it had been X number. It was either going to be a big birthday of his had he been alive, or it was an anniversary of his death.
Yeah.
And I immediately after that, straight away, I'm on the trader and I was looking. Well, I was sending you pictures of the.
Yeah, I think for the model, the model I had, the Bug Eye, you can't get. They're just so rare. Like you can't get that, and they're shonkers now.
I think what you can't get is you can't get one in the spec that you'd want because the problem is now if you're looking at them now, you're the same as me. You're going, well, if I'm having one, I'm having an STI.
Yeah.
I'm not looking. I'm not having a WRX. I want the STI. I'm not bothering.
Exactly.
And the problem is, I mean, what I started looking at straight away after that thing was like, right, if I'm having one, it's got to be Peanut Eye.
Yeah.
Or a fully restored classic.
Yeah.
Or low mile classic. But I was like, right, but if it's going to be the Peanut Eye, it's got to be the WR1, the Petter Solberg one. It was almost in the Moonstone blue colour.
Yeah, but you're looking
15 grand for a low miler.
15 grand upwards, and the P1s in the classic are the same sort of money.
Well, the 22Bs are changing hands for about 80 grand.
22Bs are scandalous money, same as the RS Cosworths. But and you think, like take that out of the way, look at your WR1, and you're looking, it's 15 grand, 16 grand. I ain't buying a Subaru for that. I'm buying M3 for
that. Well, yeah, I mean, you'd get an E92, you'd get into for that.
You get an E92 V8.
Yeah.
More modern car.
You'd get into a very clean E46 M3 3.2.
Exactly.
But they're very different cars.
It is a different car, but for the money, I'm stepping into a BMW over a Subaru.
Well, I think it depends. For me, it depends on what position it's taken in your garage. Now, if you're buying it, and we've got our hangar that we've bought, which is the first. Everyone says when they win the lottery, the first car they buy is this, that, and the other. Me and you have said the first thing we is buying a hangar.
Our hangar podcast is definitely one to come because I think we can talk for a long time about what we'd have money no object. Like 100%.
Well, yeah. I think even if you said like let's put some budgets on, so that's probably a good little series we could do actually.
Yeah.
If you had this much money and this kind of car, what would you buy? Sort of thing. I think there's some mileage in a few of those, but when you look at that hangar, I'd pay 15 grand for a good clean WR1 all day long. I'd pay, that for me.
I'm not.
You know me. I've had BMWs for 10 years, and I love my BMWs. But there's something intoxicating about the noise an Impreza makes.
Yeah,
as soon as you turn that key.
You know what? I don't deny that. I completely wholeheartedly agree. I just don't think I'd pay 15 grand for one.
Like I say, if that was your only car, or if that was your only classic that you were going to buy,
I suppose
if you were buying something saying, right, this is going to live in a garage, it's my classic car, I'm going to take out in nice weather, are you going to buy one of them or an M3? You're going to buy the M3.
Of course you are.
If you're saying, do you know what, I'm building a bit of a collection, I've got a hangar I can put them in, or a big garage I can put them in.
I've got a bottomless pit of money,
Or how high up the list does it make your top 5 modern classics? I don't know.
I'm not sure it's a modern classic.
Oh, it is.
You think?
Just because of the heritage from McRae, from Burns, from Solberg, the heritage of... If you think of the era that they came, you had Mackinnon in the Evos.
See, I'll go... So, for me, again, it's down to opinion, I guess. So, for me, if you're talking modern classic Subarus, I think you talk the P1. And obviously,
I wasn't talking a specific model. I'm just talking Subaru Impreza World Rally car.
Okay.
To me, it's a modern classic.
Yeah, all right. If you're going to go as a general,
with any model, you're always going to have more desirable than the models than others. In the same way that you're always going to have more desirable M3s than others. So you're talking E46. You're going to be talking CSL. You know, BMW, the M3 CSL is always going to be at highly priced, limited numbers.
The thing is, the E46 CSLs, they're changing hands for 70, 80, 90 grand.
Yeah. But they're limited numbers, carbon roof, lightweight, that's heritage that goes with the CSL badge.
Yeah, true.
Also, but... you go into the E92s, you've then got the... Le Mans, I think it's called, which is what Phil Baker's got. He's
the LM.
LM, sorry, yeah, and that I think it is. I think it does stand for Le Mans.
Yeah.
But that's that's he's paid probably double what you could pick a V8 up for because he's got a low mileage one. It's a limited edition. It's a late one. It's high spec, etc., etc. So I think within any car, when you start talking about something that's 10 years or older, they all become, unless you're talking about,
a Fiesta
or whatever, there's always something that makes it appeal as a modern classic. And for me, if I hear a Subaru, it immediately takes but it immediately takes me back to the times of me and you driving them together. It immediately takes me back to the times of me watching the World Rally stages as a kid. Me and Cher went to Cardiff Arms. Well, it wasn't Cardiff Arms Park. It was the Millennium Stadium. Because they had a special stage. They had the special
stage around the stadium, didn't they?
Inside the stadium, and that was a massive Subaru event. So for me, bearing in mind, I had a big period in my life where every year I went to a hell of a lot of Japanese car shows.
Yeah, you did. Obviously, I think
the Subaru presence that was there. Was phenomenal. They had all the jackets. You'd think there was the pit crew for the WRC because they're always in the blue jackets and the gold writing and whatever. I never actually took the Subaru to a show, but
I think you started to get into the show scene on the Toyotas, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I think obviously we've massively digressed on our car history, but you and the Toyota scene is an episode in itself.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That was a big part of my life. There's probably 7 or 8 years of that. I
would say that taught you a lot about what you know about cars today. You learnt a lot on probably the first one. The first one, definitely.
I mean, there's pictures I've got that we'll have to put up when we do that video of the. Well, you remember me buying? I will share this because when I bought the MR2. It was no more than a week after you'd bought the Z-Tech S.
I know, yeah. So I've got this 110 horsepower Z-Tech S. You're in your 1.4 Fiora at about 80. I'm living life because I've got the faster car.
Well, I remember when you picked up the car, and you probably don't remember this, but I was teaching Cher to drive at the time, and we bought Cher, and this was our first cock-up with mechanics. On the drive, if you remember,
changing the brakes. It weren't on the drive. It was on the front of the road.
Yeah,
while we snapped the bleed nipple off it.
I'd bought Cher a 205 XS from one of her workmates for 175 quid.
Yeah,
And I'd been driving around it because it was a brilliant little car. Manual choke, 4-speed gearbox, massive sunroof that the 205s
Yeah,
had.
it did. It did have a real big
clean
roof.
car to be fair.
It was a lovely car.
Yeah. And I'd been driving. I'm glad I did when it failed, because what actually happened was the the brake master cylinder went.
Yeah.
So I had either no brakes at all, or you hit the floor and then they'd lock. That was that was the option of braking. So, and the first time I did it, I was going relatively quickly. So it was a brown shock moment sort of thing.
Obviously, before ABS was ever, it wasn't a thing, was it?
One of them. Have ABS, no. So I managed to limp it back home and looked at the brake fluid and went, oh. Knowing nothing about cars and having no money to take it to a garage.
Let's change this.
The brake fluid's black lacquer. We'll change the brake fluid.
Yeah.
What we actually did was we promptly snapped off both brake bleed nipples on the front calipers, and it ended up going to a company that aren't there anymore. I can't remember what they were called, but they were a Peugeot specialist.
Yeah.
And we used, for people that don't know, we're from Coventry, which is where Peugeot used to build their cars.
Yeah.
So funny enough, we had a load of specialists around because
we had one or two, yeah.
Peugeots in Coventry, and I ended up having to have the new master cylinder, which is what had actually failed, and 2 calipers to fix the car. But she'd been learning in that, and I think a week or two before, you had bought the Z-Tech S. You'd come home proud as punch, and I'd been waiting for you to come back because I don't think we really had mobile phones. We did, but we didn't have mobile phones where we could phone each other and have a good long conversation.
No, because it was before unlimited minutes, weren't it? It was like £3 million a minute.
Yeah. So I think I'd been waiting for you to come back, knowing that you were. And obviously, I knew the car anyway because I knew Paul having the car. So it wasn't a new car to me, but seeing you get it was quite exciting and whatever.
Yeah.
And you came back, and your first words, I remember, I've got the fastest car now.
I remember it because I've pulled up on the drive, and you've pulled up not long after me because it must have been a Friday night. It must have been one of our Friday nights.
We'd probably gone into town after work. Yeah,
because I've pulled up on the drive in that, and you've pulled up on your drive. I think it was in the Peugeot because there was you, Cher, Kelly, might have been someone else,
probably Emma,
possibly. And I've got out proud as punch. I've got the fastest car now, so yeah, I do remember it. I do remember that, and then I also remember.
I think literally the next week, Cher passed her driving test.
Yeah, and then I remember I was on the drive. I was cleaning it, and I just finished cleaning it. I think I might have been polishing it.
I think you probably were, but so before we get to that point, so Cher had passed her driving test, and we were at work at the call centre.
Yes,
we were both working.
We both worked together, didn't we, at Barclays?
And Cher rings me up, or I get my break and ring her, and she's passed the test. I'm like, well done, babe. That's brilliant news. Congratulations. That's fantastic. Before you go out, just ring up and get an insurance quote on the Saxo, which was my instruction to her.
Yeah.
And she spent quite a bit of time trying to get this insurance quote on the Saxo, at which point everyone was going, nah, not insuring.
Not happening.
And it weren't happening. And I said nothing to you about it. And
you didn't.
That evening, Baker came round, and he said, because Baker had all been part of my plan, Baker had said, get her on the insurance and then you could get a fast car. You know what? He had a Lotus when he was 18. So yeah,
so like I said at the start, he's always had some crazy cars, hasn't he?
He's had some nutty motors. So he's sort of sat there and gone, who's she insured with? And I said, and I don't know how he knew this, but he knew that the insurance company she was with had been bought by Norwich Union or Aviva. I don't know if it changed its name then. So he said, ring up Norwich Union, tell them the situation and see what they do. Well, they literally said, we'll give you no claims 3 months early and start you a new policy on the Saxo for £700.
Yeah.
I'm like, brilliant. There we go. Do that then. So we set that up, at which point Cher's go, well, what are you going to drive? I was like, don't you worry about that. I've got some ideas, but I'm just going to drive around in the Peugeot for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I swapped my insurance onto the Peugeot.
Yeah.
And I've been talking to Chris and what should I buy, mate? What should I buy? I've got $3,000. And it was a hard $3,000. I didn't have any more than that.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And at the time, it was kind of MR2 turbo. You'd just about get into an early one. You'd be scraping the barrel, which turns out I was, but you'd get into an early MR2 turbo.
Yeah.
You get into an early Nissan GTI-R.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it for the Jap stuff.
Yeah, because you couldn't get into the Celica GT4s, could you? They were still big money.
Well, you could, but you'd be in the early ones. You'd be in the ST165.
You'd be in which was the pop-up headlight, which was the honking look.
Yeah, and do you know what? You say that, and they've grown. I mean, now they're old because but again, it's a nostalgia thing.
No, see, for me, it's still the quad headlight one for me.
Oh yeah, the ST205, and this is me showing my Toyota geekness, but the ST205 GT4 WRC, was definitely the best looking one. And if you could get that with the Castrol graphics, anyone immediately just went, "That's cool," because everyone, whether you were a car guy or not, everyone immediately said 2 words if they saw that car: Sega Rally. Yeah. That's what they said because that was the car.
That was the car.
Absolutely. So yeah, it was a GTIR or an MR2, and I loved the fact that the MR2 you could get it in a T-bar, so it's almost like a convertible.
Yeah.
And at the time, my dad had so 2004. My dad was probably 48, I think he would have been. So yeah, 21. Yeah, he'd have been 47, 48, and he was actually in the position that he was taking redundancy and he was retiring from work. He managed to retire very early. And I always remember, and I said to Cheryl, I said, I'm not being like my dad, because my dad had been threatening to get a sports car for years and never done it.
He never did he? Still hasn't.
Well, he's got his convertible, hasn't he? He'll never buy a sports car.
Yeah.
He never said he'd buy a sports car. He always said he'd get a convertible, and he has.
Yeah, he has now,
Okay, it's a diesel one, but you know that's by the by. It is a convertible. But I sat there and I said to my dad, I said, Dad, I'm not going to be like you. I said, the greatest will in the world, I'm not going to be 50 and having my midlife crisis sports car. I'm buying it now.
Yeah.
And at that point, I started looking at the MR2s, and I'd said to Shell, I'm just going to have the 205 for a couple of weeks and see what I want to do. Well, of course, I didn't have it for a couple of weeks. No. I ended up buying an MR2 4 days later. It was the first, if you think of Mike Brewer on Wheeler Dealers and all the things he tells you not to do.
You did.
I did all of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I looked at it when it was dark.
Yeah.
It was the first one that I'd seen.
And you bought it.
And I bought it. And I knew jack shit about the cars other than it was a red sports car with pop-up headlights and the roof came off.
Yeah.
I adored that car. And I absolutely adored that car for many reasons. And the main reason is, it, like you've said, it taught me everything I know about mechanics. And it taught me a lot of hard lessons. And like I say, I think if we're going to talk MR2s, we need to do a whole episode on MR2s.
It's a full episode on the MR2. The toy I've ever seen for you.
Magazine, there's so much stuff on it that I can talk about. There's probably 2 episodes could be split up over 3 MR2s that we owned in my household, sort of thing. But, that taught me so much, and I built that car from an early stock-bodied, very early Revision 1 turbo.
Rev 1, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of the first they made, and I bought it up from that to a magazine-featured car.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And, don't get me wrong, I'd love to sit here and go, I did that all by myself. Of course I didn't. I fitted the body kit myself.
You did.
And, I can tell you that Toyota used 48 bolts to hold on the front bumper on an MR2, and you only actually need about 8.
Yeah, 8 and a couple of zip ties.
Well, it's just typical Japanese over-engineering.
Over-engineering, yeah.
I think I spent a day and a half changing the front bumper. But, I had to have the engine rebuilt a couple of times on it. I had to have it painted because it was red, and obviously with Toyota red paint is pink after it's.
You see, it's not just Toyota. If you look at a lot of red cars from that era, it was just.
It was single stage paint that wasn't lacquered.
Yeah, exactly.
So I bought that car in 2004, and it was an '89 car, so it was 15 years old already. It was imported. You don't know the life it had overseas, let alone the life it had here. It didn't boost properly. Then it went in for a timing belt change and didn't run right, and had to go somewhere else. And a catalogue of errors. But eventually, I got to a car that I was really happy with, and then something else happened. But ultimately, those cars taught me a lot, and that was where I kind of went. We've digressed a little bit and missed out a couple of cars. So we went. I went Polo.
You did,
and then I went into 1.1 Saxo Forte.
Yeah.
Which, for any of you that are nearly 40 and were driving around at that era as a youngster buying a car, will remember that the Saxo Forte had the skinny arches. It didn't have the VTR arches.
Yeah, it was.
And it had the different colour seat belts.
Yeah. Were they yellow?
No. One of them was yellow, one of them was red. It had different colour seatbelts throughout the car. And it didn't have central locking, and it had these horrendous yellow, almost tennis balls on the door lock.
It's just an horrible looking car, wasn't it?
It was, but like everyone at the time, everyone had either a Saxo or a Corsa. They were the clit car of the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And the reason I bought the Saxo was because Chris had the Corsa.
Yes.
So I didn't want the same that Chris had.
No.
And also, the other reason I bought it, the other reason those cars were sold in such big volume.
They used to do years free insurance, didn't they?
Free insurance, which when you were a 17, 18-year-old lad, was a huge
massive
saving.
point. Yeah,
so I had that, and that lasted for a year. And actually, I wore out the brakes, needed new brakes. It was involved in an accident that I'm not going to talk about on here. You know the story of. And when it came back from the accident, they did a great repair on it, but I didn't want it back.
No, that's it.
Quite often, if you have a car that's involved in an accident, quite often you go, nah, I just don't want it now.
Don't want it anymore.
And I got rid of it for what was probably one of my favourite cars, actually, of that sort of younger scene of driving, and that was the Renault Clio DCI Dynamique.
Yeah.
And that was on a 52, BG 52 KZA, I think was the reg on it. Yeah. And it was a black.
No, it wasn't.
It was.
KZA was your Saxo.
No, it wasn't.
Pretty sure it was.
Oh, it was. Yeah, that was 52 actually.
BG 52.
Yeah, you're right. That was the Saxo Furio. That must have
the silver one. BG 52 KZA was your Saxo.
That was the Saxo. So yeah, I actually don't know what the Clio was.
What
but
a
the
geek,
Clio was a 51. It was an early Mark III Clio, so it was a 51 reg.
51 plate it would have been, because it was the same. 51. It was the same year as the one that we bought Safina.
That's right. Yeah. And so I got that, and again it was because Renault were doing free insurance, and it was different to the Saxo and the Corsa and everything, and no one had one in my group of friends as it was. And also, I managed to sell my dad on it using man maths. And man maths of a 20.
Man maths works, man.
As a 20-year-old, selling a wise bloke like your dad on man maths, because I had to have him as a guarantor.
Yeah.
So to finance these cars, when I bought the Saxo, I'd literally probably been working at Barclays for maybe 2 months.
Yeah.
Something like that. And because of that, I couldn't get a loan because I'd gone straight from college to Barclays. I'd had 2 months at work. I had no credit history.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get a loan. So my dad took the loan in his name, and he told me that he'd taken PPI.
Yeah.
And he didn't, because he didn't need it because of the job he did, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So what he ended up doing was taking
the extra money and banking it.
Yeah, so I paid the loan each month thinking I was paying for PPI, and actually it was probably 25 quid a month he was putting in a savings account.
Yeah.
Plus, at the time when I first bought the car, I was still living at home, so I was paying board, which went into a savings account. So after the Saxo came back from its accident and I didn't want it, I then put some man maths together and going, but Dad, this is a diesel. It will be far better on fuel, because it was the 1.5 DCI that I had.
Yeah, if only we knew about diesels, what we know now, eh?
Cracking little engine. It was only 65 horsepower, but it was only a small car.
Yeah.
And MPG wise, it'd comfortably be doing probably mid 50s. It was a really good engine. Wasn't quick, and that's more of a priority now than it was then, because you were just looking for insurance numbers then. But I had that for a year, and then I wrote that off. I spun it into a telegraph pole on black ice at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And you sit there thinking, what could I have done differently? Well, I could have gone slower, but it was black ice. You didn't see it, and once you've lost it, it's gone. You ain't getting it back.
Yeah, and obviously on the road that you lost it on, it's just not at that age, at that time of night, it's not a road you go slow on. Just not.
Well, to be fair, I wasn't going quick, because I picked up my now wife from a night out wherever she'd been, and I dropped Kelly off, her best mate, and was bringing her home. I wasn't going that fast, but I think what had happened was it had been raining all day, and the roads were soaked, and then it had suddenly dropped in terms of the temperature, and it had frozen, and I just came over the crest of this hill, and just it went round. And there was, I just at the time would I have held it now? I like to think I would, but am I really that much better than I was then? Probably not. I'm significantly better than I was then, as I think you probably are as well, because I was 20 years old. But I'd like to think with an additional 17 years and 18 years experience, we probably are a bit better. But I think now I'd have probably been going a little bit slower. But I think also I'd have probably had a bit more intuition as to, right, the car's starting to go, steer into it, and I'd probably had a bit more experience to how to hold a skid.
Yeah, the difference is as well, if you look at the cars we've got now, the power's at the back wheels, not the front wheels, so it'd be...
I think, and obviously the MR2s as well, they were mid-engine rear-wheel drive, so you can't get more unforgiving than that if you get it wrong. So that taught me a lot. But whereas now with most front-wheel drive cars, it's just, floor it until it understeers, then lift off and it'll correct, or just keep flooring it and it'll come round.
It'll sort itself out, yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, so that got written off. Then I bought the second Saxo, which was BG52 KZA.
Yeah.
That was the one that you blew the amp in repeatedly. And that was the one that you nearly got our heads kicked in by a pikey.
A gypsy, a traveller man. Yeah, that's that's another story as well.
And I had that for only for a year. I think I had that from 2003 till Cher passed the driving test in the May.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got rid of the 2, or Cher got rid of the 205 actually. She sold that and I think she did make a bit of profit because she covered the repair costs of the brakes and got a little bit on top of that. A little bit more. She sold that on.
Yeah. And
I then bought the MR2, which became my daily driver for about 8 months and then was off the road for a year. Yeah. And then at my daily drive was your mother giving us a lift to work.
Because I'd been banned at that point, hadn't you? So
So your mum had probably the shape of Fiesta that you inherited.
No, it weren't. It was a shape before.
No, it wasn't.
It was the shape I had. The silver one I had was a 58 plate. So we're talking 54. So similar shape, but the pre-facelift.
That boxy shape.
Yeah, shit shape.
Yeah. So
first shape the STM.
Yeah, so she was giving us a lift, and Cher had the Saxo because I think at the time Cher was working over in Rugby, and we were still
at the call centre in Walsgrave.
And obviously at the time I didn't have another car because I was kind of trying to plough everything into getting the MR2 sorted and that. So I had that MR2 from 2004 I think until 2007. At which point, that was. But that seems a long time, but it was off the road for a year.
Yeah, true.
So,
true.
It was closer to 2008 because it was the end of 2007.
Yeah.
About 3.5 years I had that car, or 3 years, 8 months.
Yeah.
And then I got another one, which was a stunner. It really was a good. I spent good money on that.
Yeah.
And it was a well sorted car.
It was. I mean, ultimately. You ended up with 3 of them,
didn't you? That's the one that got away, really. Looking back, that's the one that got away that I shouldn't have sold. It was a good, solid car. It was modded well. The paint was nice. Even if the bloke I sold it to went up to Scotland. He actually flew down and bought it.
Yeah.
And he actually blew it. I think he must have tried to turn the boost up higher or whatever.
Did he blow it up or put it in a ditch?
No, he blew it up because he was rebuilding. The last I heard, he was rebuilding the engine.
I knew it was one or the other.
Yeah, he was rebuilding the engine, and I sat there thinking, "Oh, this would be good," because he was going all forged pistons, bigger turbos, and this, that, and the other. And it never really happened. And it's one of those things. Occasionally, you check the MOT history on a reg and see if it's back on the road, and it's never come back on the road. So I'm hoping in some ways that it's sort of mothballed and being kept in the nice dry garage, and one day it will see the road again. But
then I think after the MR2s, you like me. I think we both got a bit boring.
Well, no, I was quite lucky when I had the MR2, the second MR2. So at the same time I had the second MR2, I actually had 3 dailies, and the MR2 was kept special. So the first daily I had was lovingly renamed the Scrote, and that was a Ford Escort 1.8 non-turbo diesel.
Yeah.
And I literally bought that with 1 month's expenses from driving to and from Banbury.
That was a nail, that was.
Oh, it had 180,000 miles.
That was a bag of spanners.
I paid 600 quid for it, But it ran for a good 9 months.
Yeah.
And I was getting about 800 quid a month in expenses because of how
you were doing the mileage, weren't you?
Basically, the way it worked was any miles over your normal commute, they paid 45p a mile for.
Yeah.
Well, I worked on the Foleshill Road in Coventry.
Yeah, you only worked like 3 miles away, didn't you?
3 miles away. They then sent me to Banbury, which was like nearly 50 miles away. Yeah, so I was claiming like 90 miles a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It was 800 quid a month coming in. And all that money got the first month. So right, buying a car for work, bought that Escort, nailed around in that. And there's, the funny stories of that. Tony, the guy we were talking about, lived over the road, helped me do the back garden. And we went to Wickes to get bark chippings for the back garden. And I said,
put it in the back of that, didn't you?
And I went in to pay for 13 bags of bark chippings. I come out, the car's on the bump stops.
Mate, talking about cars being on the bump stops, funny story about the Fiesta. I don't know if you're aware of this. Obviously, old man's got an allotment. And when I had the Fiesta, we had slabs in the back garden they wanted to take to the the allotment. Obviously, that was lowered. Ultimately, it was lowered 60 mil.
Yeah.
Lowered 60 mil because there were 20 standard and we lowered it another 40. So that was literally on its sump before anyone was in it. Then we put like 6 or 7 slabs in the back. Literally, it looked like it was on air ride dropped on its arse. It literally scraped all the way there. That was bad. That was
the thing. So I said to Tony, put 13 bags in. And I've come out and the car is literally sat on the wheels are tucked in the arch.
Yeah, same, yeah.
And I was driving back and go over the first speed bump and about rip the exhaust off it.
Yeah.
And you're limping it back. And I said, Tony, how many bags are you putting in here? And I'm thinking, I told him 13, he was 25.
Yeah.
I was like, I explained it then.
That explains why it's absolutely on its sump.
Yeah, so that day Wickes obviously had a 50% sale on bark chippings.
On bark chippings.
But that was literally dragged back. But that car, I remember that car tried to kill me a few times, and when I took it to the garage and went, "What's wrong with it?" They went, "Have you seen your tyres?" And they were down to the cords on the inside.
That's it.
The wishbone was knackered. It was leaking fuel and this, that. But ultimately, it did the job I needed it to do, and that job was to keep the miles off the Rev 4, the later MR2.
Yeah.
And just be there to plod to and from work. And it was a nail, and I hated driving it. I never enjoyed driving it, but it did the job.
Yeah.
I then got rid of that because it finally died, or I think the bill from the garage was going to be so huge to fix it.
Just weren't financially.
Scrapyard. And then I inherited a car from my little sister, who she had a 106 on a K plate. And I think it was K146SAY or something along those lines.
The red 106.
It was a red 106 XM.
Yeah. Which you sold to Willie over the road, didn't you?
Yeah, well, no, I know they came back there. We'll come back to that. But I got given that because she rang me up and said, "Do you want my car?" And I said, you're automatically thinking, well, what's the catch? What's wrong with it? And she goes, "It's failed the MOT." And I'm thinking, oh, here we go. I'm going to get a long list of stuff that I've got to fix. And I said, well, what's it failed? And she goes, tyres and brakes. She's like, what about the brakes? And she the brake discs are worn and the brake pads are worn. And
I'll have it.
It needs 2 tyres. I was like, yeah, I'll have that then.
Yeah.
I went down to ECP and said, I need discs and pads for this, please. And he comes back, he goes, that's 42 quid, please. So I went, is that for the discs or for the pads? And he went, no, that's for the lot. I was like, Christ, I'll have that. Because obviously I'd got used to Toyota parts on the MR2 bits.
You've paid, 42 for disc and pad. Let's fast forward to, 3 years ago. You bought the 430.
Yeah.
You'd had it, about 2 weeks and you needed discs and pads on it? How much that?
I knew that it needed pads and I wasn't sure about the discs.
Yeah, so literally 700 quid.
I thought the back was okay. And actually, it's interesting because I took that out the other day. That's going to need pads in 8,000 miles. And I started thinking, really? And I thought, actually, they've lasted quite well because I've put 30,000 miles on that.
Yeah, I mean, you've had it a while now, haven't you?
3 years in May it'll be. And I have no intention of getting rid of that. But so I had that 106 and eventually I was ready to scrap that. And I sold that to, I think it was Cosy I sold it to. I think I sold it to a guy who lives down the road from us anyway. I said, look, you can have it for scrap money because that's where I was taking it. And the car was leaking fuel and it was lucky it hadn't caught fire, but he was mechanically minded. He fixed all the little things. His missus had just passed the test and it was an ideal car for her to smoke around in. And then what happened was it turned up opposite us
at Willie's house
6 months later, and I'm thinking, what the hell was going? What's this doing up here? And he bought it off him in the pub.
Yeah.
Again for scrapping, but I had a spare key.
You still
for
had
it.
a spare key, didn't you?
So the radio got retuned a few times, and it got turned around, and you know.
The thing is as well, Willie, when you've turned it around, he'll have been up the keys. He'll come back, and he won't realise that you've turned it around. He'll just be stood outside scratching it like that. I'm sure this was the other way around, but he won't think anything of it because he'll have been that arsehole the night before. Exactly. He won't remember.
But we did that a few times, and then eventually, I think after the car had gone, I went, I had the spare key for that, and it kind of the penny
dropped at that point there. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I had that, and then I inherited again.
The Hyundai.
I did. I had the
green machine.
Mother-in-law's pea green machine. Yeah. So my mother-in-law had from brand new a Hyundai Accent Coupe 1.3, I think it was. Very basic car. The slightest gust of wind and it had changed lanes on the motorway.
Give it that way.
The tyres were skinnier on that than they were on my push bike sort of thing. And it was, really basic car. But it was really low mileage. It started and ran first time. And she was in Ireland at the time. And I said, well, can I have it then? And I'll just use it and keep the miles. I'll fix it if anything goes wrong.
That was another one that you literally ran into the ground as well, wasn't it?
Well, sadly, it's sad what happened with that car, really. And from a sentimental point of view, that it was Cher's mum's car, and she's no longer with us. I think what actually happened was that the car got parked up because I think I bought my 3 Series. I sold the MR2.
You did.
And I bought the 3 Series, and the 3 Series was a much newer car and a much more capable daily. It was
the love of BMW began, weren't it? Really?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And it wasn't a car I wanted. Well, it was a car I wanted, but I wanted the M3, but I couldn't stretch to the M3.
Yeah.
So I bought the next best thing, and it was a 5-speed manual 2002 330 Ci M Sport Cabriolet, and I loved that thing. It was a cracking. It made a great.
It was.
It was, we had a great road trip out with the MR2 lot in that. You got one of your best ever photos.
One of my favourite pictures is in that car, yeah.
And it was just a good, fun car, and it was only about $4,500. You look at it now and go, it was a cheap, fun car.
Yeah, really. It was for the money you paid for it.
The money I paid for it. But sadly, it had been in an accident, which I didn't pick up on when I bought it, which meant that the driver's side arch rotted.
Rear arch, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had a new one welded in, and that rusted as well. It was you
really struggled with the back end of that car.
I did, to be fair, and it got to the point where eventually I got the job that I'm doing now, where I needed a diesel, and that was when I bought the Saab. So I had the 330 from just before I got married in 2011, right the way through till it was 2018. I sold it.
It was only the other year, wasn't it? A couple of years ago.
But what happened was in end of 2014, it went off the road for a year, and I had the Saab, which was my daily because of the miles I was doing. I think a year later, I managed to get a really good deal on a multi-car policy, and I put it back on the road. And we killed your Vectra trying to jump start it. We bananaed the clutch in the Vectra.
Yeah, you absolutely smoked the clutch. That died not long after that. In fact, the clutch did go not long after that, and then scrapped the car. Yeah,
but I had that car for a long time, and it did hold a very special place in my heart. And to this day, I still kind of regret getting rid of it, but then at the same time, I don't, because I think if I'd kept it, to get that car right, really, it probably needed, $1,000 of mechanical work on it.
It needed a new clutch,
flywheel. It had oil leaks on it. It had all sorts of stuff that needed doing to get it fixed. It needed
I think
a new interior to put in it, or a used interior, but that wasn't great. The roof was broken.
But you had the new roof.
Yeah, but I put that on it. It didn't work. So I'd have had to have paid someone, and you could have ended up spending a fortune trying to fix that.
I think if you hadn't have got rid of it and you'd done the work on it, you wouldn't be sat in the cars, in the 3 cars you're in now. You wouldn't be.
No, I completely 100%. Agree. I completely agree. I think the other thing that would have happened was, had I kept it and said, right, I'm ploughing 5,000 or 6,000 quid into it, which is what it would have needed
at least.
Stop a body shop to give it a full repaint and get it looking right, to do all the mechanicals, to sort the interior out, and to get the roof working, to get everything working, I think you could quite easily have gone and spent £5,000 or £6,000 on it, and it wouldn't have been worth that.
No, because
had it got that one badge on the back,
if it was the M,
it would have been worth doing, but it wasn't worth doing on a 330. And you look at the price of them now, it still wouldn't have been worth doing. No. But ultimately, what had happened was, if we go back to the chronological order, I'd bought the 330, I'd used that as my daily, and then I'd got the promotion to the job I do now, needed a diesel to smoke around in. I went and looked at a Vectra down at Roadstar, just down the road from us. Now it's funny what they sell now compared to
they've grown a little bit, haven't they?
Just a bit. McLaren 650 or 720S they sold the other week. And
they've got some tidy cars.
A very nice M2 comp.
They've got a fleet of Range Rovers X5s.
Real high-end stuff that they're selling.
It's all prestige motors there now.
Exactly, but they had this Vectra, and they may have taken it in Part X, and I looked at that at £1,500 and thought, that'll do. But there's always been a special place in my heart for Saab. And that's because my granddad drove Saab. My dad drove Saab, so I wanted a Saab. It was almost a bit of a tick in the box that I've had a Saab. It wasn't a real Saab because it was a Saab when GM owned Saab. It was
ultimately the same as my Vectra with a different shell on it.
Yeah, exactly. But so I bought that. I mothballed the 330 for a year.
I think I used it for a fair bit of the time when the Vectra died, didn't I?
Well, that was a year later. So it'd been off the road for a year while I had the Saab, and then the Saab got chopped in the January because it was very early New Year when I went, because I remember buying my A5 between Christmas and New Year, and I drove to Huddersfield because they told me the car was ready to go, and of course it wasn't. So I made them bring it to Leicester, and you came with me. We picked up the A5 and then watched the Saab
smoke off
back to Huddersfield, smoking like a trooper, and
the clutch on its way out
later on, so he obviously did make it back. But and then I moved into the A5, and I said when Audi launched the A5 in 2008, maybe I think it came out. When I saw one, I said, I'm having one of those.
It was a car you always wanted, and then
I just love the shape of it. For me, that is the closest you can kind of get to an American muscle style car. In Europe. Well, obviously you can buy the Mustang now, but
you had it with the wrong engine for that.
Well, yes, I did, but again, I had it with the wrong gearbox. I'm not sure it was necessarily the wrong engine as well. It was the wrong gearbox, but if I needed diesel, I should have had the 3 litre. But again, that was a hell of a lot more money at the time.
I think you were massively underwhelmed by the A5.
I wasn't massively underwhelmed. I think it did the same job very well that the Saab did. And it was an awesome place to be. The sound system was fantastic. The Bang & Olufsen sound system was awesome in it. It was the first time I'd had a proper integrated car phone kit. I used that a lot because of the miles I was doing for work and stuff. So I really did enjoy the car. And I've said this to you before. I think I'd say to you, I liked the car.
Yeah, you never loved it.
And I never modified it. And I think for me, as daft as that sounds, that's kind of the benchmark of whether I enjoy something or not, is whether I'm going to spend any time or money sort of making it better. And I had that for 2.5 years. I put 50,000 miles on it. 2.5 years?
It would
have been. And then someone very kindly hit me from behind. The motorway had come to a complete stop. I'd stopped. The Volkswagen Caddy van behind me didn't. He reckons he was doing 50 when he hit me. And my back's never really been right since, to be fair.
No, it hasn't.
And everyone goes, "Oh, you got some compo out of that?" So, well, yeah, I did, but I'd much rather have my spine not be knackered the way it is, to be honest. But that's something that continues to be problematic, but you deal with it and get on. But that was that destroyed. And then I went off to America after that had happened, and that was where my real love for BMW came, where I spent some proper money on one. Because I bought because I had gap insurance on the Audi, I bought the 430D I sold the 330, sold all my parts for the 330 clear.
Yeah, you binned everything, didn't you?
And everything went into the 430. So as soon as I got it, it had the wheels refurbished and new tyres on the front axle, new brakes all round. The full gloss black M Performance body kit was put on it, carbon spoiler was put on it, bits like that. It was all machine polished up to look the part. And then I was like, oh, this is great. And then, then ended up eventually with a set of 20-inch wheels on there, and the lights have been tinted. And
it evolved very rapidly.
Yeah. And you look at it now, it's funny, isn't it? Because we were in Stoke.
Yeah, we seen the exact car. So we seen it literally was the same car, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So mineral grey, red interior, 330D convertible, M Sport, no kit on it. And we're like, that's garbage.
Yeah.
But when I remember you pulling up at my house on the Sunday you bought it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's mint. That's like properly nice.
Yeah.
Now, after because you haven't done.
It's OEM Plus that I've done.
Yeah, it's OEM Plus. So it's not outlandish. You've not gone airbags on massive wheels with massive, huge bumpers and vents. Like you say, you've got the M Sport Plus kit on it ultimately, a little bit of fly eye. There's nothing out, but.
It's the wheels for me that makes that car.
Yeah, you've got the LM wheels on it, and it just looks, CS wheels on it, and it just looks so much better than a stock one. It really does.
Yeah, but it's even, that obviously was the love affair for BM, and then obviously Cher had an Evoque, which I eventually managed to get her to get rid of.
Yeah.
Which I really didn't like at all. It was her dream to have a Range Rover. She's had an Evoque. She will want a Sport at some point.
Yeah.
I think. But she got rid of that, and we were all set to replace the Evoque with something like a Range Rover Sport, and then BMW were doing an offer that I just couldn't turn down on the M2 comp, which was 2.9%, and I was all set to chop the 4 in. I thought, I've had my fun with the 4. I don't need diesel anymore. I'll go and chop it in, get an M2. That'll be my deposit. Cher said, you ain't getting rid of that car with the amount you've spent on it, with what you've done to it. And she's had it. And I think the times that she has taken it out when the weather's been nice and the roof's been off and she's got a lot of attention in it, I think she likes the car. But funnily, the other car we bought last year was a little Renault Clio, which I got. But once I got rid of the Evoque, we went down to just using the 4 Series.
Yeah.
And my mate Chris kept going, buy a Clio, come and do track days.
Go racing.
Yeah. So I bought a little Clio RS 200, and I absolutely adore that thing. It's a bonkers little machine for what it is. And, my next door neighbour who's an engineer, and we spent a bit of time on paint and tidying it up.
We spent a lot of time on that car, just doing bits and bobs,
making it look a lot better than it did. I mean, the paint was so contaminated when we picked it up that it ruined the clay bar, didn't it?
Ultimately, we've literally, as daft as it sounds, and I know that you hear a lot of second-hand car dealers say, but we've polished money into that car.
Yeah, well, we had until I kind of reversed it into the house.
Yeah, until you binned it into the house.
Yeah, I've got it. Well, it wasn't the house actually; it was Tesco's. But we've got.
Oh no, we shared it. Bin the 4 into the house, weren't it?
Correct. So you've got to paint the bumper in the summer on that. But ultimately, we bought that. That was a little track car. That's all it was supposed to be. I just put new brakes on it to get it ready for next season. I can't get her out of the bloody thing.
Well, I think the problem with sharing the 4 is she still sees it as your car.
And I do. I love that thing. I built that thing. I put all the bits on. And I
think come the summer, I think you'll be in that surprisingly more than the 2.
You see, I don't think I will. And I'll say this completely honestly. You get in that the M2 competition again. We'll put a picture up so you can see what this is, and I've got some cracking pictures of that taken.
Yeah, you have. Yeah,
which are on Instagram on MGM Motorz, so have a look at those.
I'll link all the channels down below.
Yeah, but that car is 410 horsepower, and it's just so much fun. It's an absolute hooligan spec.
Yeah, 100%.
I get what you're saying. It's nice to get in the convertible, drop the roof, and cruise along and stuff. Yeah, I'm sure I will be in it at times. I'm not saying I won't use it full stop, but I think that at the moment the M2 doesn't come out mainly because it's behind a security post with a disc lock on. It's just quicker and easier to jump in the Clio because of how crap the weather is.
It's not the weather for the 2 at the minute, is it? You can't. It's too cold. It's too wet.
There is a certain car, and we're not going to mention it because we'll talk about his cars in a separate episode, I think. But that, you know, there's a car that I've been out to play with that is next level to the M2, and you know, we go out and have a play in that, and that's what that car's for. So I guess it's going to depend on what I'm doing it for. Now,
yeah,
you know,
I think if
the North Coast 500, there's no shadow of a doubt I'm in the M2 all day long.
Yeah, of course, you know,
but different things. But you know, we've rattled on. I think, you know, you've just very quickly got to cover off your car list that so you've been the ZTEC S,
been the ZTEC S,
the Subaru. Then you sold that stupidly, and you had, I seem to remember it being a Moonstone Blue, which was a lovely colour, but it was about
306
car.
306 diesel, HDI 110, had that, ran that till you could injector went on that, and I went bang, so I got rid of that, scrapped it. Then after that, I had another Fiesta, 1.4 ZTEC Blue, so a little limited.
The one you inherited?
Yeah, I inherited that. So I had that for a little while. Then found out I was going to be a dad, or a bit small. Got rid of that. Got me a dad car. Got me a Vectra.
That was a nice spec Vectra, though.
Yeah, it was an SRI, 2-litre diesel.
There is something though. You've got to stop buying cars from the same bloke because they don't last that long.
No, they don't. So yeah, I had a Vectra diesel dad car, SRI with the X-Pack on it. So it looked the business. 19-inch wheels. Tried to get a set of 20s, but they didn't fit. Different hub. Yeah, they were off an Insignia, and I thought they'd fit, and they didn't. They were different. They're different hub on the Insignia. I thought they kept it the same, but they didn't. So that, obviously, we killed the clutch on that originally, starting the BM, towing the BM.
Now, I think that's the first time you'd ever towed a car.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was the first time I towed a car, and it fried the clutch.
Yeah,
and then it got to the point the clutch was beyond repair, and I just thought it's economic, so I got rid of that.
But it was a high miler by the time you got.
Yeah, it done over 100,000, and they weren't looked at. It wasn't looked after before I had it, to be fair. And then after that, what did I go into a Duke after that?
I think that was pretty much after that. You had your. I think you kept that running until you kind of went Duke, Qashqai.
Then I went Duke, Qashqai, and to be fair, obviously the girl's mum was working for Nissan, so I got a great deal. I ended up getting new cars every 6 months. But ultimately, she got made redundant. It was a case of, I need to buy a car. I'm not apps.
And we spent many evenings looking for cars.
We literally spent, you think about it, it wasn't that long. We didn't spend that.
You missed out on the one that you should have got.
Yeah, I should. So obviously, I'm in an F30 320D M Sport now. But the one we should have got was, again, an F30, but it was a 325D. And literally, it went the next day after we looked at it.
The spec was a little bit better, wasn't it, than what you've got? It had the big screen nav.
No, I think it had the same nav. I think the difference was it was a 325, so it had the bigger engine, it had the 6-pot engine rather than the 4-pot.
Well, it didn't, did it? We thought it was a 6-pot, but it wasn't. It was just a more powerful 4-pot in the 325.
Was it?
Yeah, because we weren't sure on that, and that we found out, but it had gone by the time we'd actually.
Yeah, it had gone, and then obviously I ended up seeing this one in Scotland and got a run around in the end on the delivery, didn't I, to be fair?
I did take a while, and we ended up let's go to Warsaw to get it.
Let's go to it was brought down from Scotland to Warsaw. Obviously they gave me 50 quid to get the car cleaned because it was an absolute bogging state when I picked it up.
But to be fair, Lee did a cracking job on it.
Yeah, Lee, obviously LA Details, again, I'll link their website and Facebook page down below. Did a fantastic job, obviously. Ceramic. Well, he didn't ceramic it. It was machined, and it was just a decon wash, really, and a protection.
Yeah,
but yeah, he did a really good job on it. And that's where we're at with mine.
You took your 320D badge off the boot for you.
Yeah, he debadged it for me, and
cleaned the steering wheel up, which was a right state.
Yeah, the steering wheel was a big one. Obviously, I need to redo it again, to be fair. But and that's where we're at today.
So the garage today, so that the cars you'll hear us talking about, if we're talking about our current cars or doing any detailing stuff, is there's an F33, which is my car.
Yeah,
it's the missus car really, but it's that's Anastasia. My cars are named. I know Graham hasn't done this with his, but
mine's a Smurf. Mine's always going to be Papa Smurf, and it's Esther Blue.
my car was named, and the reason she was named Anastasia is that the car is grey, so it's mineral grey, and the interior is red. So the Christian Grey and 50 Shades of Grey, Red Room of Pain, and the lead character in that is Anastasia. So
I'm not too sure there's going to be many women watching this, so the men ain't going to understand.
This was the funny thing. I had never read the books and I'd never seen the film. And I was driving back from buying it in Mansfield, and I rang Cher and said, "What was the name of her in that film?" Because I knew that those two things.
Yeah.
And that name just stuck straight away.
Yeah.
My little Cleo is called Nicole. And
for
most of
reasons.
you are probably too young to remember the adverts with Vic and Bob from the 90s with the Clio, where
Nicole,
it
was
Papa. Most of you are probably a bit younger than me and remember Thierry Henry and the Vavavoom, I think.
Yes, yeah, there's a fair chance.
So that's Nicole for that reason. And the M2, he's got the name Elsa. And it is from the film Frozen, because in that film, she has two very different personalities. One where she's a psychotic bitch and freezes everything, and one where she's a really nice princess and runs the country all lovely. Most of the time, that's how the M2 can be. A nice, calm, unruly, not unruly, that's the wrong word, but nice and calm and an easy place to be and an easy car to drive. But you press a little button that says M2, and it might as well be labelled psychotic bitch.
Yeah.
Because it just goes a little bit nuts, a little bit sideways, and has us giggling like school kids, as I said earlier. So that's where the name came from there, for a bit of split personality on that one. But that was that. And then yours is obviously Papa Smurf.
Just literally Papa Smurf, Estoril Blue, isn't it? So, yeah.
Estoril Blue. And there's going to be some work coming up on that will be hopefully...
Yeah, obviously when COVID's finished, and I think we'll leave this for episode 2 now. We'll talk more about what's going to happen with the channel, what we've got planned for you guys. But after COVID, obviously, mine's going in for paint, wheels. Going to keep it pretty much stock looking wise. A little bit of, again, OEM plus mine will be. Yeah, and obviously a few electronic-y bits, i.e. audio, on mine. But yeah, so like I say, we'll leave that for episode 2, 3, whatever. Obviously, we'll talk more in detail on the Toyota MR2C.
This has gone on from being a bit of a vlogcast.
Yeah, we've literally rabbited on. Well, when I say we, Matt's rabbited on about his car history quite a lot.
It's not my fault you haven't bought that many cars.
Well, this is true. And the ones that I've bought I tend to bin. But yeah.
Well, it's a good job we ain't got Chris on, because we probably need a 4-hour episode just for his car history.
And Chris's are pretty much all supercars.
There's a good selection of supercars in there. There's a good selection of high performance cars.
Let's let high performance cars. Yeah, so yeah, we're talking you going from like a Lotus Elise right the way up to a McLaren. Is it 650 he's got now?
Yeah, 650.
Well, that's his current daily McLaren 650.
Not a daily,
I'll stick a picture up here.
Yeah, but yeah, he's in all sorts in the past as well. But we'll have to get him on to talk.
Yeah, we'll get him on at some point so we can talk about his cars and his escapades in cars. But guys, thank you so much for watching episode 1. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click the subscribe button, click the bell button, because you'll get the notifications when the next episodes are out. So from me, I'll see you soon.
Stay safe, guys. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.